My name is Luna. I'm 27 years old. And last week, my parents sent me a group message that broke me. We think it's best you step away for now. I thought it was a mistake until my aunt reacted in a way I never expected. This isn't just about family. It's about betrayal, secrets, and finding courage when the people who should love you most push you away. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and subscribe for more real stories on family drama, revenge, and emotional courage. I was sitting on my couch, balancing a lukewarm cup of coffee on one knee while scrolling through my phone. It was late Sunday morning, one of those quiet hours where the world feels still, and for once my mind wasn't racing. That peace lasted all of 10 seconds, because right there, blinking at the top of my notifications, was a family group text from my parents. I opened it expecting something simple, maybe a reminder about an upcoming birthday or mom's usual chain of inspirational quotes. Instead, my stomach sank when I read the words, "We think it's best you step away for now." I froze. My thumb hovered over the screen, rereading it again and again, as if the meaning might change if I blinked hard enough. It didn't. The words stayed the same. Cold. Final. Almost rehearsed, like they'd been drafted before being sent. For a second, I thought maybe it wasn't meant for me. Maybe they'd typed the wrong person. But no, it was sent to the group thread that included me, my siblings, and my aunt. My name was right there, glowing back at me like a spotlight I never asked for. I can't describe the feeling in my chest except to say it was heavy and hollow at the same time, like someone had knocked the wind out of me but left a stone sitting right on my heart. I felt a burn behind my eyes, and before I even realized it, my coffee slipped from my hand, spilling across the carpet. I didn't move to clean it up. I just stared at the phone. There was no explanation, no gentle lead-in. No, we love you, but just that flat sentence, sent out for everyone in the family to see. I didn't know if it was punishment, rejection, or some strange test, but I knew one thing: I'd never felt so publicly unwanted. My first instinct was denial. I texted back, my hands shaking. What does that mean? Step away from what? Did I do something? No response. The little dots that usually appeared when someone was typing never showed up. Just silence. I set the phone down and pressed my palms into my eyes. My mind scrambled through every possible reason. Was it because I had missed the last family dinner? Was it because I'd spoken up about how they treated me differently from my brother? Or maybe it was the argument last month when I'd refused to lend money again. I didn't know, and the not knowing made it worse. Minutes stretched. Then, out of nowhere, my phone buzzed again. My breath caught. I thought it might be Mom or Dad explaining. But no, it was my aunt. Her message wasn't quiet or careful. It was short, sharp, and furious. "What on earth is wrong with you two? You don't treat your child like that. Shame on you." I blinked. My aunt wasn't the type to get involved in family drama. She usually kept her head down, offering soft hugs and neutral advice. Seeing her stand up like this sent a rush of heat through my chest. Someone cared. Someone saw me. But at the same time, fear settled in. Because if she was angry enough to speak up in the group, then this wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was serious. I tried to call my mom. Straight to voicemail. Then my dad. Same thing. I don't know how long I sat there in silence, the carpet still damp from spilled coffee, the room thick with that kind of quiet that presses against your ears. I could hear my neighbor mowing his lawn outside, kids yelling down the street. The normal world kept moving, but mine felt paused, cracked wide open by a single sentence. I thought about my childhood, how I'd spent years trying to be the good daughter, the one who made honor roll, who volunteered at church events, who took care of my younger sister when my parents worked late. Yet somehow, no matter how much I gave, I was always the one criticized for not being enough. The group message felt like confirmation of something I'd feared deep down for years, that I'd never been wanted in the first place. Still, I couldn't just sit with it. I needed answers. I grabbed my keys and drove to my parents' house, my heart thudding the whole way. Every red light felt like an eternity. When I pulled into their driveway, the blinds were closed. Their cars were there, but no one answered when I knocked. I rang the bell, pounded on the door. Silence. It was like they'd already erased me. I stood on the porch, staring at the welcome mat that suddenly felt like a cruel joke. I thought about the countless times I carried groceries in through that same doorway, the holiday dinners around the table, the laughter that now felt like it belonged to someone else's family. Finally, I got back in my car. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely turn the key in the ignition. Back home, I found myself pacing the living room, replaying every interaction with them over the past few months. The tension at Easter, when I'd mentioned wanting to move out of state for work. The cold stares when I said I was too busy to babysit last minute. The small digs about how I wasn't settled, yet like my brother. The signs had been there. I just refused to see them. And now, staring at that message on my phone screen, I realized this wasn't about a single mistake or disagreement. This was something deeper, something planned. When the buzzing started again, I snatched my phone up, half expecting another cold response from my parents. But it wasn't them. It was my aunt again. "Don't go quiet on me, Luna. Call me." Her voice, when I finally did, was sharp but trembling. She was angry, but underneath, I could hear fear. "Sweetheart, I've suspected for a long time your parents have other motives. This isn't just about you. It's about money. It's about control." I didn't fully understand then, but her words planted a seed. Something bigger was going on, something that made the rejection sting even more. But in that moment, all I could do was sit in the half-light of my living room, clutching the phone, listening to my aunt's voice, and realizing that my family had just changed forever. And it all started with one message. When I finally called my aunt, her phone picked up almost immediately. Her voice, usually calm and warm, was sharp, almost trembling with anger. "Luna, what on earth is happening? I just saw the message." I hesitated, my throat tight. "Aunt Melissa, it's—" "No, don't start. Just tell me exactly what they said." Her words cut through my nerves like a whip. I swallowed and read the message aloud, my voice shaking slightly. "We think it's best you step away for now." There was a pause on the other end, a silence so heavy it pressed against my ears. Then came a low, incredulous laugh. Not a laugh of amusement, but one filled with disbelief and fury. They just can't treat you like that." "I don't understand." I whispered. "I've tried to be, I don't know, good. I've tried to help, to be part of the family, and now it's like I don't even exist." Her voice softened for a moment, but the edge of anger remained. "Luna, I've seen this coming for a while. You think your parents are doing this out of love or fairness? No, this is control. And maybe money, maybe pride. But it isn't about you being too much trouble." I felt a strange mix of relief and terror. Relief because someone finally saw the truth, and terror because the truth sounded bigger than I could handle. "What do you mean?" I asked cautiously, gripping my phone like a lifeline. Melissa's tone grew even sharper. "I mean, they're protecting something, hiding something. I've seen it in their eyes for years. They've been favoring your brother, playing favorites, pushing you aside whenever it's convenient. And now they've sent you away like you're disposable." I stared at the carpet, trying to absorb her words. Every childhood memory came rushing back. The birthday parties where my gifts were ignored, the way Mom would sigh whenever I tried to speak up, Dad's subtle comments about my dreams being unrealistic. It was all connected now, like puzzle pieces falling into place. Melissa continued, her voice now barely above a growl, almost whispering in outrage. You've done nothing wrong, Luna. You've been everything they wanted, and they've thrown you aside. I'm not going to let them do this quietly. Not this time. Her fury sparked something inside me, a flicker of hope I hadn't felt in weeks. What are we going to do? First, she said, her voice gaining that calm yet commanding edge she always had when she was serious, we make sure they know that you're not invisible. You're not going to sit quietly while they decide your worth over a text message. And second, we dig. I've been suspicious of their actions for years. There are things hidden, documents, letters, small details no one else notices. I think it's time we find them. I could barely process her words. Dig. Documents? Letters? It sounded intimidating, but empowering in a way. Finally, I felt I wasn't alone. Melissa's anger didn't fade. It simmered like a fire that had been building for decades. Do you remember the time your dad called me complaining that you asked for a few extra dollars to fix your car? He said you were irresponsible. I stayed quiet back then. I shouldn't have. You've always been responsible. They just don't see it because they don't want to. Her voice softened briefly, almost regretful. I should have spoken up years ago. Luna, I wish I had. But we can fix this now, even if it takes time. I felt tears sting my eyes, a mixture of frustration, sadness, and gratitude. Melissa was the one person in the family who had consistently noticed the unfairness, and now she was taking action. We spent the next hour talking, unpacking memories I hadn't realized were significant. Small events suddenly made sense. The way Mom subtly praised my brother's achievements while glossing over mine, the way Dad always found excuses to delegate me to less important responsibilities, the offhand comments at family dinners that undermined my efforts. Melissa's voice grew urgent. They're hoping you'll just disappear, that you'll feel too hurt to fight. Don't let them. That's exactly what they want. I nodded silently. Though she couldn't see me, my hands gripping the phone so tightly they were starting to ache. Her words, though furious, carried a kind of strength I hadn't realized I craved. And Luna, she added, pausing for emphasis, if they're thinking this is going to end with you just stepping away, they're dead wrong. You have more support than you think. You have me, and I'm not going to let them get away with this. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. I don't know what to say. Then don't say anything, she replied sharply, her tone softening just a fraction. Just listen, pay attention, and remember, this is not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. None of this is about you. It's about their control, their greed, their insecurities, and we're going to expose it. A small smile crept onto my face despite the lingering sting of betrayal. I hadn't felt this protective, this heard in years. Melissa wasn't done yet. Her fury now had a plan, precise and deliberate. Tomorrow I'm coming over. We're going to look through your grandparents' old files, letters, anything that could explain what they're hiding. I've been keeping a few things myself, just in case, but now it's time to pull them together. The idea of uncovering hidden secrets in my family's past both thrilled and scared me. The thought that my parents' rejection could have a tangible motive, a secret motive, made the entire situation feel real, urgent, almost cinematic. As the day turned into evening, I realized I hadn't eaten. The coffee had long gone cold. My stomach was twisting with anxiety, but there was also a strange sense of anticipation. For the first time since receiving that crushing message, I felt like there was a path forward, and it wasn't going to be passive. Melissa's fury had opened a door, one I didn't know existed. She wasn't just angry, she was mobilizing, and I was being pulled along. There was no room for hesitation or silence. We spent the next several calls strategizing. She reminded me to keep a record, of every interaction, to take screenshots, to document everything in case this escalated further. She encouraged me to write down every memory I had of favoritism or hidden motives, no matter how small. These little details, she said, would matter later. Her advice was methodical, her tone oscillating between fiery and nurturing. You've been underestimated your entire life, Luna. That stops now. If they think sending a cold text will break you, they're in for a shock. The day wore on, but I couldn't stop thinking about the small incidents Melissa mentioned. How Dad had quietly erased my contributions from a family photo album, how Mom had whispered about me needing to figure things out, while giving lavish praise to my siblings. None of it had made sense before, but now it was all part of a pattern. Melissa continued, I'm not saying this will be easy. They are going to resist, maybe even lie, but anger without strategy gets you nowhere. We need patience, but make no mistake, I'm furious enough for the both of us. I laughed quietly at that. I think I'm going to need that fury. Good, she said. Channel it. Let it guide you, but don't let it consume you. And remember, whatever they do, we stick together. No surprises, no silent games. I've got your back. Her support made me realize how isolated I had felt all these years. Even my closest friends couldn't fully understand what it was like to be rejected by the people who were supposed to love you most. But here was my aunt, angry, unwavering, and ready to act, not just talk. That night, I found myself pacing again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the pacing of despair. It was the pacing of anticipation. I imagined our search through old letters, the documents we might uncover, the conversations we would have to confront head-on. I thought about the courage it would take to face my parents, armed with truth. By the time I finally sat down, exhaustion mixed with a renewed sense of purpose. Melissa had turned my heartbreak into strategy, my anger into direction. I realized that sometimes fury is more than emotion, it's a weapon, a shield, and a guide. I sent her one last text before bed. Thank you for everything. I don't know what I would do without you. Her reply was instant, as if she had been waiting. You'd survive, but together we'll thrive. Rest now. Tomorrow we begin. I lay awake long after that, my thoughts spinning. The sting of rejection still lingered, but now it was tempered by something stronger. An awareness that I wasn't alone, that someone in my family could see injustice and act. I felt a strange pride at being protected by someone who loved me unconditionally, even if the people who should have loved me most had turned away. Melissa's unexpected fury had changed everything. It was no longer just a text message. It was the opening of a new chapter, a chapter in which I would not disappear quietly. The next morning, the air was thick with anticipation. I had barely slept, replaying every word my aunt had said, every memory she had dredged up, every suspicion she had hinted at. Melissa was coming over, and she wasn't just bringing advice. She was bringing action. I felt both anxious and oddly comforted, as if the fury she had displayed the night before had somehow built a protective shield around me. When she arrived, she didn't waste time with pleasantries. Her car pulled up in the driveway, tires crunching against the gravel, and she stepped out carrying a brown leather satchel that looked far too heavy for someone of her petite frame. There was a weight to her expression, a tension in her shoulders, a fire in her eyes that told me this wasn't casual. She was prepared. I didn't bring coffee, she said quickly as she entered my living room, but we don't need it. Today's about digging up what they've been hiding. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. Melissa unpacked the satchel with deliberate movements, revealing a stack of old folders, yellowed envelopes, and a leather-bound notebook that smelled faintly of cedar and dust. The notebook, she explained, had belonged to my grandparents. It contained notes, financial details, and letters that hadn't been shared with anyone in years. I felt a mix of fear and excitement as we spread everything across my dining table. The sight of all those papers, each one a piece of the puzzle, made the previous week's family drama feel smaller in comparison. This wasn't just about rejection. It was about uncovering truths that had been buried under decades of secrecy. Melissa picked up a faded envelope, her hands steady, but her jaw tight. "This," she said, tapping it lightly, "is where we start. I suspect your parents have been manipulating portions of the estate. They've made it look like you're expendable, but your grandparents' intentions might say otherwise." I glanced at her, heart pounding. "Manipulating how? What do you mean?" She exhaled slowly. "There are clauses, Luna. Small additions, omissions, things they filed or hidden. They hoped no one would notice until it was too late. But your grandparents left more than money. They left messages, intentions, guidance. That's what I want to find first." We started with the notebooks. Every page was filled with careful handwriting, dates, and tiny annotations that I hadn't noticed in previous family visits. Melissa pointed out a recurring pattern. Whenever certain properties or accounts were mentioned, there were notes about who deserved them, written clearly in my grandparents' hand. I traced the lines with my finger, feeling the past reach out to me. One entry, dated several years before their passing, mentioned my name explicitly. "Luna is capable. She must be considered for all fair shares. Avoid favoritism of others." My breath caught. For years, I had believed I was always the less favored child, the one who had to fight for scraps of attention or support. But here it was in black and white. Melissa noticed the change in my expression. "See, this is why I knew something was off. They never intended for you to be pushed aside. This has been your parents, doing all along." We moved on to the folders, opening each envelope carefully. Some contained legal documents, others old letters between my grandparents and various financial advisors. Melissa had a keen eye and began cross-referencing names, dates, and signatures. "This one," she said, holding up a crisp letter, "was supposed to be included in the official will. Notice how your parents' initials are in the corner. They intercepted it." I felt a jolt of anger, a mixture of betrayal and disbelief. They altered the will." Melissa nodded, her expression hard. "Not entirely, but enough to skew the narrative. They made it look like you weren't meant to inherit, that your role in the family's future is negligible. That's why they sent the group message. They hoped you'd back down quietly." We worked in silence for hours, sifting through papers, letters, and dusty files. Each new discovery revealed another layer of deceit. Payments redirected to my brother without explanation, letters never sent to me, mentions of accounts I didn't even know existed. Every piece was a shock, but it also slowly built a map of what had truly been intended. At one point, Melissa found a small envelope tucked in a ledger. She handed it to me, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside were 3 letters, each addressed to me, carefully folded, and signed by my grandparents. I unfolded the first, and tears immediately stung my eyes. "Luna, we hope you always know how proud we are. Your parents may not see your worth, but we do. Remember, family is not always about proximity. It's about recognition and care. We want you to have every opportunity, every fair share, and every chance to thrive. Never let anyone diminish your place in this family." I barely heard Melissa gasp next to me. "They wrote this for you to have if your parents ever tried to shut you out." I nodded, my fingers shaking. I never knew." She placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "They wanted to protect you. Luna, you're more important than they let on. And now we can prove it." I felt a renewed sense of determination. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming what had been taken from me, understanding my true place in the family, and finally asserting the worth that my parents had tried to erase. Melissa suggested we document everything carefully. Every letter, every note, every piece of evidence. We created folders, took photographs of documents, and wrote detailed summaries. This meticulous record-keeping wasn't just preparation. It was empowerment. The act of organizing, verifying, and understanding the hidden truths gave me a tangible sense of control. Around mid-afternoon, we paused for a small break. Melissa brewed coffee in my tiny kitchen, and I sat staring at the pile of papers, feeling the weight of generations pressing down on me. I can't believe they tried to erase me, I whispered. Melissa handed me a cup, her eyes meeting mine with fierce intensity. They didn't erase you. They underestimated you. That's all. And underestimation is something we can use to our advantage. I laughed softly, despite the tension. It was a shaky, relieved laugh, the kind that comes when fear begins to shift into strategy. You really think this will make a difference? She smiled, a rare softness breaking through her fury. I know it will. This isn't just about money or property. This is about truth. Once the truth comes out, your parents can't rewrite history. They can't pretend you don't exist anymore. We returned to the documents with renewed focus. Melissa pulled out an old ledger and pointed to a series of numbers and annotations. See here? These were never mentioned at family meetings. They're tied to a trust your grandparents established for you. Your parents kept it quiet, hoping you'd never discover it. I traced the numbers, my pulse quickening. If this was real, then everything I had been told about my worth in the family was a lie. Everything. The idea that my parents could dismiss me over a single message, a single argument, while secretly holding assets meant for me, made my blood boil. Melissa noticed my reaction and gave a small, approving nod. Exactly. And now we know. We can use this knowledge wisely. But we have to be careful. They're skilled at manipulation, and they'll resist any attempt to reclaim what's yours. Hours passed. Afternoon light shifted to evening, casting long shadows across the table. We found more letters, more financial notes, and even a few diary entries from my grandparents that detailed their hopes for me, their instructions for my future. Each discovery felt like a small victory. Each truth uncovered a tiny flame against the darkness my parents had tried to create. By the time Melissa packed up her satchel, the dining table was almost covered with the remnants of a lifetime of secrecy, folders, letters, notebooks, and ledgers. I felt exhausted, emotionally spent, but strangely alive. Melissa looked at me with a mix of satisfaction and determination. We've done enough for today. But remember, Luna, this is just the beginning. The truth is on your side, and now we have the evidence to prove it. Your parents sent that message thinking they could push you aside, but the tables are turning. They won't see it coming. I nodded, clutching a letter from my grandparents, feeling a strange warmth spread through my chest. The anger, the betrayal, and the hurt were still there, simmering beneath the surface. But now, beneath it all, there was also power. For the first time since that group message arrived, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. I felt heard. I felt like the person my grandparents had always believed I was, and thanks to my aunt's unwavering fury and guidance. I knew I wasn't going to let anyone, not even my parents, take that away. The day of the family meeting arrived faster than I expected. I could feel my stomach twist with nerves, anticipation, and a simmering anger that refused to settle. The past few days had been a whirlwind of revelations, hidden letters, ledgers, and the truths my Aunt Melissa had unearthed. But now it was time to face the people who had tried to erase me. Melissa arrived early, just as the late afternoon sun began casting long shadows across my living room. She carried a folder, thicker than any I had seen in years, packed with the copies of letters, documents, and evidence we had meticulously gathered. "Are you ready for this?" she asked, her voice steady but her eyes sharp. I nodded, gripping the strap of my bag. I felt a strange mix of dread and determination. As ready as I'll ever be. We drove to my parents' house together, the ride silent except for the occasional instruction from Melissa. Stay calm. Speak only the facts. And remember, no shouting unless absolutely necessary. They can't argue with proof. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed the familiar house, the same one that had been my childhood fortress and my prison. Its walls, once warm and inviting, now seemed to loom over me, heavy with years of unspoken tension. Dad's truck was already there, and I could see Mom through the window, her posture stiff, her arms crossed tightly. Melissa gave my hand a reassuring squeeze before we stepped onto the porch. I rang the doorbell, and almost immediately my parents appeared. Their expressions were guarded, their smiles forced. My brother lingered behind them, looking curious but cautious, clearly unsure why I had come. "Luna," Mom said, her voice clipped. "What is this about?" I held Melissa's gaze, drawing strength from her steady presence. "We need to talk about the will and the message you sent me last week." Dad's face tightened. "I don't know what you're talking about." Melissa stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Don't play innocent. You know exactly what she's talking about. We have documents, letters, and notes from your parents and grandparents. We know what's been hidden." I felt my heart race. It was one thing to read the evidence at home, but another entirely to confront them face to face. My throat tightened, but I forced myself to continue. "I received this," I said, holding up my phone, "and it broke something inside me. You told me to step away, to disappear, as if I didn't exist. But I've learned the truth. My grandparents left instructions, messages, and resources meant for me, and you tried to hide them." Mom's lips pressed into a thin line, her hands trembling slightly. Dad's eyes darted to the floor, avoiding mine. My brother shuffled uncomfortably behind them, clearly realizing this was bigger than he expected. Melissa added, "We have everything documented. Every letter, every note, every discrepancy. It's all here." She tapped the thick folder against her leg. "We aren't leaving until this is addressed properly." The tension in the room was suffocating. I could feel the past years, the favoritism, the silences, the subtle criticisms pressing down on me like a weight I had carried alone. Now, armed with proof, the imbalance had shifted. Dad finally looked up, his voice strained. "You don't understand. We were protecting you." "Protecting me?" I echoed, incredulous. "By telling me to step away, like I'm nothing, by hiding what's rightfully mine." Mom's eyes filled with unshed tears, but her voice was defensive. "We only wanted to avoid conflict. You were always so sensitive. We didn't know how to handle it." I felt a surge of frustration. Sensitive or inconvenient, because that's what it feels like now. Like my feelings, my place in this family, are inconvenient for you. Melissa leaned in, her tone cutting through the tension. "Let's be clear. This isn't about feelings. This is about facts. The will, the documents, the letters, all of it proves Luna's rightful position. And hiding it, that's not protection. That's manipulation." Dad's jaw tightened. "Melissa, this isn't necessary." "It is necessary," she interrupted sharply. "You sent a text to push Luna out. You tried to erase her. This meeting is necessary because we will not allow that to continue." I could see the panic flash in Mom's eyes. The rigid posture softened slightly. I didn't speak for a moment, letting Melissa's words hang in the air, the weight of truth pressing down on everyone present. Finally, I pulled a letter from my bag, one of the letters written by my grandparents. "This was meant for me," I said, holding it up. "They knew what you were planning, and they wanted me to have this. They wanted me to be recognized. And here it is." I unfolded the paper, my voice trembling but strong. I read aloud the words, the love and guidance from grandparents who had died believing in my potential. Mom's hand went to her mouth, and Dad's shoulders slumped. My brother's eyes widened, a mixture of guilt and surprise. When I finished, Melissa placed the folder on the dining table, spreading it open. So every document, every letter, every note was visible. "Look at it," she said firmly. "The truth isn't a matter of opinion. The evidence is here." Mom shook her head, struggling to speak. I didn't realize. I cut in, or didn't care. Because if you had cared, you wouldn't have sent that text. You wouldn't have hidden everything meant for me. Dad finally spoke, his voice low and almost defeated. We thought you wouldn't fight for it." I felt a mixture of triumph and sadness. I've been fighting for it my entire life, even when I didn't know it. But now I have proof, and I will not step away. I am not invisible. I am not expendable. The room was silent for a moment, the air heavy with tension, realization, and the weight of years of deception. My brother finally spoke, his voice hesitant. I didn't know any of this. I thought it was normal." Melissa's gaze softened slightly, but her tone remained firm. "Normal or not, it's wrong. And it stops now. Luna deserves what was always meant for her, and the rest of us need to acknowledge it." Mom's hands trembled as she reached for the folder, but I gently pushed it back. "This isn't about forgiveness, yet. This is about accountability. We are only beginning this conversation." Dad rubbed his face, his eyes closing briefly. "We made mistakes. We didn't realize how much we hurt you." "I'm not asking for excuses," I said. "I'm asking for recognition. Recognition that I exist, that I matter, that my grandparents' wishes matter, and that you cannot dismiss me with a text message ever again," Melissa added. "And if you think you can manipulate the truth anymore, think again. We have everything documented. This family meeting isn't just a conversation. It's a reckoning." I could see the tension shift. The rigid, defensive walls my parents had built began to crack. They realized that their control had limits, and that I, supported by Melissa and armed with the truth, was no longer someone to dismiss lightly. Hours passed as we went through documents, letters, and records. Questions were asked, clarifications demanded, and every attempt to minimize or redirect was met with calm but firm resistance. I realized something profound. Confrontation wasn't just about anger, it was about standing firmly in the truth, about ensuring your voice is heard and your rights are acknowledged. By the end of the evening, a fragile understanding had begun to take shape. My parents were no longer in denial, though the guilt lingered heavily in their expressions. My brother had begun to see the depth of the deception, and Melissa had orchestrated the confrontation with a precision that made the impossible feel achievable. As we left the house later that night, I felt drained but strangely empowered. The group message, once a symbol of rejection and despair, now felt like the starting point of something new, a shift in the family dynamic, a revelation that truth and courage could challenge even the deepest patterns of favoritism and manipulation. I glanced at Melissa as we drove home, and she gave me a small, approving smile. "You did well today, Luna. This is only the beginning, but you held your ground. That's what matters." I nodded, the weight of the confrontation still pressing on me, but the spark of determination now blazing brighter than ever. I knew that the road ahead would be difficult, full of resistance, denial, and more revelations. But for the first time since that fateful text, I felt like I had reclaimed my place, not just in the will, but in the family and in my own life. This confrontation wasn't just about money or documents. It was about respect, recognition, and finally demanding that my existence mattered, that my voice could not be silenced, and that hidden truths would no longer remain buried. The days following the family meeting felt strangely surreal. I woke up the next morning with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. The confrontation had been exhausting, but it had shifted something fundamental inside me. The knowledge that I had a voice, that my place in this family was undeniable, and that no one could erase me again. Melissa had insisted I take a moment to breathe before making any further moves. "Revenge isn't always loud, Luna," she had said. "Sometimes it's quiet, deliberate, and far more powerful. Let them realize the truth on their own terms." I understood exactly what she meant as I began to sift through the remaining documents and letters. I wasn't seeking chaos or public humiliation. I wanted acknowledgement, restoration, and justice in its purest form. Slowly, I started to organize my life, my finances, and my sense of self around the clarity I had found. One morning, I went to the bank to meet with a financial advisor I had secretly contacted days earlier, guided by Melissa. The advisor, a calm and precise woman named Claire, had already reviewed my grandparents' estate and the documents we had gathered. "Everything is in order," she said, her tone steady. "The trusts, accounts, and properties intended for you are all valid. Your parents can't interfere. Legally, you have full claim." I exhaled, a weight lifting from my chest. The knowledge that I was no longer dependent on their approval, no longer bound by their manipulation, was liberating. I felt a quiet satisfaction, a satisfaction that didn't need to be broadcasted or celebrated with drama. It was mine, internal and unshakable. Over the next few days, I took deliberate steps to assert this newfound freedom. I started with small gestures that were almost imperceptible to others, but carried deep meaning. I updated my mailing address for all legal correspondence to my own apartment, ensuring every letter, every notice, every document about the estate would come directly to me. Then I began to reclaim the spaces I had previously been excluded from. I arranged a meeting with the property manager overseeing one of the smaller family homes. Walking through the familiar rooms, now legally mine to manage, I felt a strange combination of nostalgia and empowerment. I arranged for repairs, updated the interior, and left a note for the tenants explaining that the property was now under my care. It wasn't revenge in the loud sense, but it was a clear statement. I existed, and I was in control. Melissa watched me quietly during this period, offering advice but letting me lead. "The quiet ones," she had told me, "often achieve the most. People underestimate what they can't see coming. That's your advantage." One evening, I received a message from my brother. His tone was hesitant, almost apologetic. "Hey, Luna, I wanted to say, I'm sorry for not realizing sooner. I see now that you've always been right about your place in the family." I paused before responding, letting my thumb hover over the screen. This was part of the quiet revenge, not to retaliate, not to scold, but to make people reflect on their actions. I typed carefully, "Thank you. That means a lot. I hope this can be a new beginning." It wasn't about power or vengeance in the traditional sense. It was about reclaiming dignity, recognition, and peace. Over time, I noticed subtle shifts in my parents' behavior as well. They no longer spoke to me with the same dismissive tone. Their attempts at manipulation had lost potency, and there was a new, unspoken awareness of my autonomy. One morning, I received a call from a local community organization my grandparents had supported. They had discovered through the estate documents that my grandparents' intention was for me to continue their charitable work. I was invited to take an active role, Accepting felt like a reclaiming of legacy, something beyond money, beyond property, a part of the life I was meant to live. The first event I attended was small, a gathering at a community center where I met families my grandparents had helped. I shared my story quietly, focusing on the work rather than the drama. Yet, the presence of my grandparents' guidance was palpable. I realized that revenge didn't need to be public or loud. The real triumph was in living a life aligned with truth, justice, and my own values. Melissa joined me at the event, smiling warmly. See, you're already making them realize your worth, not through confrontation, but by thriving. That's far more powerful than anger ever could be. The weeks turned into months, and my life began to feel steadier. I had taken control of the properties, set up accounts for my inheritance, and involved myself in the charitable projects my grandparents had envisioned. I built a network of supportive friends, neighbors, and colleagues, all unaware of the family drama, but aware of my presence, my competence, and my calm determination. One quiet evening, I received a letter from my parents. It was carefully written, polite, and surprisingly honest. They admitted their mistakes, acknowledged their attempts to manipulate, and, in a way, asked for forgiveness. I read it slowly, feeling a sense of closure wash over me. I didn't rush to respond. My quiet revenge wasn't about satisfying my ego. It was about asserting my autonomy and letting the truth speak for itself. In my apartment that night, I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. I felt a deep sense of peace. The letters, the documents, the confrontation, they had all led to this moment. I was no longer defined by my parents' choices or their attempts to diminish me. I was defined by my actions, my integrity, and the life I was choosing to lead. Melissa called that evening, her voice warm. "You did it, Luna. You've achieved what most people spend a lifetime chasing, freedom with dignity. They can't touch it now, no matter what." I smiled softly. It feels good, better than I imagined. And the best part is, it's quiet. No shouting, no dramatics. Just me, finally living the life I was meant to. In the following months, subtle events underscored the power of quiet revenge. My parents began consulting me for decisions regarding the family estate. Their tone had changed, respectful but tinged with the awareness of past mistakes. My brother continued to reach out, no longer with hesitation, but with genuine curiosity and support. And through it all, I maintained the calm, composed stance I had built, a quiet force that didn't need to announce itself to command respect. I even reconnected with old friends who had distanced themselves during previous family conflicts. They noticed the change in me, the strength, the confidence, and the serenity that radiated from my choices. I realized that living authentically and asserting my truth quietly was far more satisfying than any dramatic confrontation or public spectacle. One particularly memorable morning, I received a call from a lawyer representing one of the charities linked to the estate. They wanted to collaborate on a project that would benefit dozens of families in our community. As I discussed logistics, strategies, and long-term goals, I felt a profound sense of alignment with my grandparents' vision. My revenge wasn't against individuals anymore. It was a reclamation of purpose, of intention, of life itself. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the letters and documents neatly filed away, a sense of quiet triumph settling over me. I poured myself a cup of tea, inhaling the aroma, and reflected on everything that had happened. The journey from that group message to this moment had been intense, emotional, and at times overwhelming. But it had taught me an invaluable lesson. Power, revenge, and justice don't always have to be loud or violent. Sometimes they're expressed through calm, deliberate, and intentional living. Melissa stopped by for a quick visit, carrying her usual warm smile. She handed me a small, handmade journal. For you, she said, to document your journey, your thoughts, victories, and reflections. Not just about the estate, but about life, about freedom. I opened it carefully, running my fingers over the blank pages. It feels symbolic, I said softly. A new chapter. She nodded. Exactly. You've reclaimed what's yours, Luna. And now, every choice you make, every day you live authentically, is part of the quiet revenge. They see you, respect you, and cannot deny your presence. That's the ultimate victory. That night, as I journaled by the soft glow of a lamp, I realized something profound. Freedom isn't about chaos or retaliation. It's about reclaiming control over your own narrative, asserting your value, and thriving quietly while the world watches. My revenge was not in confrontation or anger. It was in living fully, deliberately, and unapologetically. The journey had been long, filled with emotional turbulence, betrayals, and unexpected allies. But I had emerged stronger, wiser, and more centered than ever before. My parents' attempts to push me away had backfired, not through loud drama, but through resilience, preparation, and the courage to stand firmly in truth. As I looked out the window at the city lights twinkling below, I felt a deep sense of liberation. This was my life, my voice, my choices. My quiet revenge had become my ultimate freedom, a freedom that no one could take away, a life lived with dignity, integrity, and a profound sense of purpose. And for the first time in years, I felt truly, unshakably, and completely at peace.